Welcome back to Pop Fusion Live. If you love comics or underdog stories, the comic shop is for you. I spoke with writer director Jonathan Bowen about this nostalgic film that explores friendship, fatherhood, and chasing your passion. Let's take a look. I was actually reading about it and learned that it's about a real life story about Mike.
It wasn't real life Mike. Of course, I really just sort of ran with the name. And I think when I started writing the script, I just kept his name as Mike. And Mike was my comic dealer when I was a kid. And, it would go from comic cards to comic books to Magic the Gathering and Spawn. And so, he was kind of like my go-to guy for all the nerdy collections when I was a kid. So yeah, I kind of inspired it by me just remembering those times and going to the store with my mom and kind of thinking as the years went on, he didn't seem as happy with what he was doing. Um, and he was kind of spending time across the street, like having a couple beers at the pub and not, focused on the stores much. So then I started imagining like maybe there was something else he wanted to do. Like and so then, I'm running a small business myself. I was, in my mid 30s when I started writing this. I realized that, it's a lot of hard work and it doesn't matter what the business is or how cool it might seem. Business is just time consuming and mostly accounting and bookkeeping and payroll and, whether it's inventory management or things like that. So that's kind of how I came up with this idea that there was something else Mike really wanted, and that was to actually be the one drawing comics and being the creator.
No, that's so interesting. I love the fact that you said like when you were a kid, you would, go to the comic shop and you would go to that store. Let's talk about that feeling of like nostalgia and what these types of like shops bring to us. I know they still have so many like gaming stores and card stores, but let's talk for a second about the comic shop community. Is that like a thing?
I mean, definitely, I remember having because it was so old school. We weren't so online, and there was no internet like when I was really young. So I remember having this note card, and it had like all the different comic stores there. So I would mainly go to like two or three of them, but I had backup options written down in case I couldn't find something. So there was always that sense like when you walked in, like maybe you're looking for something really specific and you're hoping to have it or the new issue of this or that. But I always had a lot of fun just browsing too and discovering things I didn't know about. Um, I had a bad tendency to want to get into more and more as, I'd pick up something new and then I'd start collecting a different line of comics and
No, but that's so cool. I love Mike's story though. Let's talk about, Mike being, with his business and how it was kind of going out of business. You saw him giving up as a kid and now he's giving up as the character in this movie. Let's talk about, with running a business and being a business owner and these real life heroes that we have who are actually going through Mike's experiences. Can you walk us through his experience?
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because I've read a lot about like the struggles of real comic shops now, and
Yeah.
most of the people running them do say like, if this isn't something you really love, like it's just something that you really feel compelled to do, it's not a great business. I mean, it's not something you'd start up thinking, ooh, I want to be a millionaire. I'm gonna go open a comic shop. I saw a
Yeah.
funny quote in there's a documentary called My Comic Shop Country that kind of goes over this, which is it's a good documentary. I think it's free on Tubi. But but yeah, so for Mike, he's not only dealing with just the normal pressures of the small business, and comic shops have already been a tough thing, even 10, 15 years ago. But then we had the pandemic, and of course every business is, affected that doesn't have an online presence as much. And so he's trying to like recover from this period that a lot of small businesses are, and the people are just not coming back. And we've seen that a lot. Like movie theaters, they've come back, but they haven't come back in the numbers that we're hoping for. That studios are thinking like, okay, when's everybody going to come back? And I think what happens is people over a certain period of time form new habits. So if they don't go to a movie theater for 2 years, it becomes hard to reestablish the habit of like, oh, that's right. We when movies come out, we go see them sometimes. Instead, they're in the habit of like, it'll be on streaming in 3 months or 4 months or whatever.
Yeah, no, you're so right. You know, you're literally you're seeing a movie get so popular, but then in the back of your head, you're like, oh, this is gonna be on streaming, so I'm just gonna wait until that happens. That is impacting so many different situations. I mean, even the characters in your story from Mike and Brandon, they went through so much, right? What type of inspiration do you feel this can be for people watching to not give up on their dreams?
Yeah, I mean that is the big message of it really is like that sometimes we need someone to kind of pull us out of that monotony, that sort of routine. And Mike is creating his own roadblocks too. Like he's telling himself a story. My wife was she's like a life coach and she was talking about this as a big thing where people they we tell ourselves stories that we accept as reality, but it's just a story. It's not true. So in Mike's mind, he's like, well, I'm too old. It's too late for me to pursue my dreams. And then when this kid comes along and doesn't see him as that old, sees him as very talented, and is like, well, look, I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you at least give it a go? I mean, I think you could succeed if you tried again. And Mike resists and resists, like, look, kid, it's too late for me. So I think that what I want to do is make a story where people realize that like it isn't too late to pursue your dreams. Does not have to be over the top. I'm not saying quit your day job and go join a rock band, but it's more like asking, is there some time you could set aside each week, even if it's just on like Saturdays or something like that, where you could pursue something that is important to you and gives you that sense of like, I hesitate to say purpose, but that sense of like passion that keeps you going and is something that you've always wanted to do.
Oh, well, that's so fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again for your time on Pop Fusion TV, and I hope you have a good weekend.
Please keep watching Pop Fusion at popfusiontv.com.